Okay, so I've logged in to Salesforce. I'm logged in as a system administrator right now. So I would be able to see anything that you guys technically should be able to see. One area to start is, since each of you have different teams that you're representing, each of your teams probably see different things over here on this right-hand side. So one thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to jump over. Right now I'm in the subscription sales. I'm going to jump over, I think, to regular sales. Probably is going to look more familiar to you guys. So that changed my tabs across the top here. So these things should look a little bit more like what the advertising side would look like. Okay, so one of the things that is helpful, do you guys also get questions from your teams on how to do things, or like why they can't see something, like, hey, I can't? Okay, good. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with this portion of Salesforce, but there's what we call the back end, the setup menu. So I don't know if you've already done this before, but if you click setup, one thing that can be helpful is to actually log in as one of those users to see what they're seeing. Because as a system admin, you can see everything. So you're like, what do you mean? It's right there. I can see it, but maybe they can't. So sometimes it's helpful to go find their name in the user list, log in, see what they're seeing without having to actually walk to their desk and be like, okay, show me. You can just pretend to be them for a moment and then log back out. And then you can be like, oh, I see what you're talking about. It's not working for you. And then that's when you might get Eric involved so that he can maybe investigate exactly what the issue is, because there could be a technical problem. So the way to do that is under your name, there's setup. And then in the left-hand sidebar, there's a section called Manage Users. Underneath that, there's Regular Users. If we just click on it, it'll show us the various users in the system. Now you'll notice there's views. So I'm looking at only subscriber users, but you can go to all active users. And this will show you all the users in the system. And you can find the specific one that you want to log in as. One thing that's important to remember is when you log in as them, it kind of changes your browser a little bit. So you're logged in as you in certain tabs, and you're logged in as them in other tabs. So sometimes it can get confusing when you're going from tab to tab in your browser. You always want to remember to log out as them before you try to do something as you again. Otherwise, you start messing with things.
Do you need their password? Or
you do not.
So you just click on login.
You just click on login. So name somebody in your team.
Joyce Rizzolo.
Okay, so let's log in as them. Let's see.
So that note, actually, if you guys use Chrome, what I found is that if you open up an incognito tab and open up Salesforce and log in as another user, they're two separate instances technically, so you can still work in yours and see what they're seeing in theirs. You can actually work in theirs.
Yeah. So let's log in as Joy.
Meanwhile, I'm calling her up, what's your password? I'm asking the other Eric, what's your password?
And then it's a pain because then they have to, give you an activation code and all this stuff. And exactly. So the login feature is really helpful. So now I'm logged in as Joy. I see everything as she's seeing it. So if she's like, oh, I don't see my company, you can search for that company as her and be like, oh, it's not showing up, must be a security problem. Or, oh, I don't see that field on my company page.
And I'm sorry, so if she's on her end logged in, I can still log in.
You can.
Log in too.
Yep, it will not affect anything. The only time data gets affected when there's multiple people touching the same thing is if you're editing the same thing at the exact same time. Like if you're changing a company record and she's changing the exact same company record at that exact moment, you might get an error message that just says refresh, do it again. But this makes it really helpful. So you can, if she was like, oh, I logged in and I couldn't even click on a company, then you could come in and click on a company and be like, well, it worked for me, so I don't know, maybe there's something I need to actually show you. Maybe you're doing something wrong. But if it doesn't work for you, then you can see an error message. Then that's when you can be like, okay, Eric, this is the exact error we're getting. Clearly there's something wrong because I can do it, but she can't. So that's really helpful. Again, though, it'll tell you up here that you're logged in as Joy. Whereas if I go over here, the top doesn't say that. So this is me logged in as me. This one's me logged in as Joy. So I just need to remember before I start doing things over here, because sometimes if you click on something, it redirects you to as logged in as Joy, and it's kind of, it does it sometimes, it doesn't always, so it's kind of finicky. You just want to make sure that you log out as her before you do anything like that. I don't even know if this is going to load if my internet's just slow. So to do that, you just log out.
What I noticed about this company page is that company page is the subscriber company page. Joy is part of advertising, so that might have been that hoping they'll redirect.
This company page?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
this
you're right.
company page for subscription.
So what is?
You know why? Because does she have access to subscriber? This is a subscriber record type. That's why.
Yeah, she's access.
So let's pick on a different one, and that should show the regular one.
Yeah.
It's the subscriber record type that has its own page. We can change that too if that's a problem, Eric. We can update the page assignments.
It's not a problem, but of course, that would happen one time.
Yep.
She say my page has changed.
Changed. Yep. Yeah. So things like that, being able to pick up on those discrepancies is definitely key. But you notice this one. This is the one where we clicked on the contacts tab. It still now says we're logged in as Joy, even though we thought we were us. So we just need to log out, close the tabs that we had open that was in her, and now we're back as VennScience. So it makes it really easy. If you're creating records as that person, it's going to look like that person created it. So try not to create a bunch of stuff, because then it might show up on their opportunity reports and stuff like that. Or if you create it, delete it, as an admin later or something like that if you're testing something. But that's really the only thing to be aware of there. So that can be helpful. Let's see. Another thing that is helpful would maybe be around reports. Let me close out of this. So they tell you, I need to see, a report that shows me XYZ data. One thing that's important, and you guys might already do this, I don't know, how advanced everybody is, so I could be reiterating things you already know. But when you create a new report, usually what I like to do is, sometimes people get confused by this, and maybe you don't, but there's different levels of different things in here. So a lot of times people are like, well, I want a company report, but now there's these companies with contacts and how do I know which one to pick? So a lot of times what I like to do is go to a specific record and be like, okay, if you were running a report and you wanted to see the data on a record, what data do you want to see? If this is the record, okay, what are the names of the fields that you want to see in there? So I usually start by doing something like that and going through a process of them being like, okay, do you care about this one? Do you care about this one? Make note of those. And then if there's anything in these subtables, that's when we would have to go, not just regular opportunities, but we'd have to start thinking about is opportunities with products or opportunities with contact roles, etc. So that's where it starts to get into those other gray areas. So if it's just stuff on this page, regular opportunities is great. If it's anything related to it in these sections, that's when we start having to dig a little bit deeper. So one area, I don't believe the advertisers are using it today necessarily, but is this products table. Eventually, everybody's probably going to be using products, and that's a key one in your reports to always select your opportunities with products if they care about what they actually sold. So that would be one example. Another one would be companies versus contacts with companies. This one's not going to give you any of the contact level data in that report. And the annoying thing about reports, I don't know how familiar you guys are, is once you create a report and you pick one of these, you can't change it. You can't go back and say, oh wait, I didn't select the one with contacts and I just built this whole thing and now I want to say I want contacts in it. You can't change the report once you already built it. You have to create a new one. So you have to start over. So that's why it's important. I usually try to go through, on a page, what do you want to see? Then go, okay, this is the one I want to create. Otherwise, you get to that step and then they're like, I don't see that field, and you can't add it because you chose the wrong report type.
Can you show what the company products report looks like? Just because that's something I know I'm going to use.
The opportunities with products?
Yes.
I can. There's probably not a lot of data in it right now for advertisers because I don't believe they're using products yet. But I could show you for subscribers, since we do have a product table for subscribers right now, so you can see some semblance of what it would look like. So the first thing that's important is, since you all work for an individual team, is to figure out, I only want to see data for that team, right? So the first thing you're going to want to do is pay attention to the filters up at the top here. So, if you want to see all opportunities, that's great, but if that's going to be all opportunities across all teams. So you would want to kind of get it a little bit more narrowed down by adding filters. So we can do this probably by record type, and then you can choose which team from here that you care about. So we'll choose advertising, or actually I should use subscribers since they're the only ones with product data. So choose subscribers. Obviously the other filters are important as well. Do you care if all the opportunities are won, or if they're only, still in progress, if they're in their pipeline, you want to make sure you're selecting the correct things, as well as around dates. So one thing I don't know advertising, in your system specifically, but for subscribers, there's different date fields. Like maybe they care about the day the opportunity closed, or maybe they care about the subscription start date, right? So you want to make sure that you're not only selecting the correct time period, but that you're selecting the correct field date level for that time period. Do you care about close date, or should we be looking for, term, let's see, term start date right here. So that's one thing that's important. Another thing that gets people hung up a lot, and you might, again, be familiar, but is when we're making changes to a report, sometimes people are like, hey, I have a lot more data than this. Like, what's going on? This isn't right. And that's just because we're in the edit screen. It only shows you, like, I think it's the maximum of 50 records on this screen. So even if you have thousands, it's only going to show you up to 50. You just have to click run to see the rest of them. So that's often, if your end users are building reports and they're confused, that could be a part of the problem. If they're like, I'm not seeing all the records I need to see, well, you need to click run. Would be a common issue that we run into. The next thing that's important is what format of report do you care about? The standard default that it puts you in is just rows and columns like an Excel spreadsheet, nothing fancy. So typically we like to do something a little bit more advanced than that, like a summary level report, where we're grouping data together so that we can summarize it into some meaningful information, and we can add charts and make it fancy for them. So that's, you just simply change the format right from the drop down, and then you'll notice that you get this little grouping section where you can group it by any field that exists on the table. So we're looking at opportunities with products. So that means that we can choose anything on that opportunity page that's here, or if there was products down here and there were columns, let me actually go to a subscriber one so that we can see one. Let me see if I have an example. I'm going to click on this guy. It's probably going to load me into Squid, so this might look a little different than what you guys are used to. But here's an opportunity for subscribers. Here's their products. So you see that there's 4 products associated with this one. So if they want to see anything at this level, we also have the ability to pull that in. So we have opportunity information and product information. So it kind of categorizes the fields into these different folders based on the section on the screen. So if we wanted to say, I want to see all my opportunities, but I want to see them by product type, and in the future, advertising will have the ability to do this. This is grouped by journal, but maybe that would be grouped by online or newsletter or webinar, or something like that. They'd want to see all my webinar things I've sold. You could group it differently. And now that we have a grouping capability, we have the ability to sum different dollar amounts on the screen too. So we could say, now I want to see, what the total dollar value is across each of these sections plus a grand total at the bottom. Or I want to see an average of all that data. And so it'll break it out, differently here. Another thing that I tend to find when I'm building reports is it gives you these columns just by default. You're like, I want an opportunity report. So it puts a bunch of stuff on here. Most of it is not even relevant. Most of the time. Usually I'm like, okay, like there's one field on here I care about. So when I'm building reports, I usually start, I do my filters, and before I even do anything down here, I click remove all columns. And maybe this is crazy, but I like to start with a blank canvas and just put what I want on here. So I started with nothing, and then I go and find what I care about. And there's a couple ways of adding fields on here. Sometimes people are like, okay, I'm dragging and dropping, but then they get confused because like right now it's all green because there's nothing on there yet. But then it's like, if I drag this here, oh, I thought I dragged it on, but oh, it flicked to red for a second. So then it went back over there and I thought I added it, but I didn't. There's another way that makes it really quick and easy, and then you can drag and drop later. And that's just double clicking. So if I double click on these, it will just add it as the next column at the end of all the columns you have so far. So that can make it building a report much quicker, and then you can drag it later. So you have a little bit more flexibility there. So let me go back and find my product name so we can group again. Again, I like to use, I guess it's already grouped. So I like to use this little search bar. I think it's much faster than being like, okay, let me scroll through and find. that's again why I like to have a page open at the same time, because I'm like, oh, they care about this field. What's it called? Okay, I'll copy that and I'll search for it. And then if there's multiple of them, then I have to go, okay, wait a minute. There's a rep number on the opportunity, there's a rep number on the owner, and there's a rep number on the company. Which one do I care about? Well, it's the one on the opportunity, because I'm on the opportunity page and this is the field. So now I know which one I need to select. So it kind of helps with that process of elimination, because a lot of times you end up with the same field across multiple places and you're like, I don't know which one to pull on. And then you pull one on and the end user is saying, I don't see the data I have in there. And you're like, well, let me try to troubleshoot. It just makes it a lot quicker, easier, for you in the long run, because then they will just have the data the first time. Okay, so another thing that I like to do, let me think here. Sorting, it can be helpful too. So say we care about dates on here, right? So we're looking at current fiscal quarter. If we wanted to look at, so I'm using term start date. So if I wanted to also bring term start date on here, I could group this date differently than I could group something like a text field. So if I was grouping by product name, I don't really have much, I can sort ascending or descending, and that's about it, right? So you can sort alphabetically. If I have a date, there's this little drop down here and you can group dates by different categories. So you can say, I want to see it grouped by week, or I want to see it grouped by month, or I want to see it grouped by quarter. So a lot of times, based on whatever my range is, I'll set these to be a little bit more granular. So if you're looking at the whole quarter, maybe you want to look at this by month. The total would be for the whole quarter. But maybe, you want to also see some subtotals. So let me put my amount field back on and we can look at that. Another thing that's important, really quick, when I'm even talking about amount, is that when we're looking at opportunities with products, we have to remember that products have their own amount as well. So each of these can be sold for a price, right? Then they roll up to a total price. So on a report, if we use the total amount field, the one from the opportunity level, it's going to show the same dollar amount for every product, because you're using the total. You're not using the by product price. So that can get confusing too, because if we summarize this, this is saying that the Journal of Women's Health, or let's actually pick a different one that actually has money here. Here we go. 3D printing and additive manufacturing is $11,508. But that's not true, because that's what the whole opportunity that you sold this one on's dollar value is. So you just have to be careful you're not skewing the data. What we really care about is going back to our page and saying, what field are we pulling on here? Are we pulling on total? No. We want to pull on this one. So total price is really what we should be looking at, not amount. So we'd pull that one on instead, and I'll just show you the difference by summing them next to each other. See how this amount changes from 11,000 to 2,000? That's a big difference. So if you pull the wrong field on here and then send the report to somebody, they're going to be like, wait a minute, this data's all wrong. So again, that's why I always keep a page open to make sure I'm pulling the right things on. So we'll get rid of total amount and we'll just use it by product. Let's see, what else is important?
Could we maybe go to the advertising
Sure.
side of this and
So let me go to a different report. Absolutely. Let me actually get rid of that one completely, because you wouldn't have products right now. So let's start a new report. And want to give me an example of one that you think your people would ask for?
yeah, how about closed business for 2016,
Mm-hmm.
all opportunities closed, all reps.
Okay. So I'm going to choose the opportunities report type.
Mhm.
And then I'm going to start with my filters. So all opportunities, that will pull for all reps.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing is closed one.
Mm-hmm.
So that part's simple. What time frame would they want to look at?
Let's look at,
For the next fiscal year, 2016.
yeah, be a 10/1,
2016.
2015
Yep. So we'll change this to
9/30,
next.
2016.
Okay. So that's a great point. Because you told me specific days, I want to point this out. Sometimes people will go and start typing in 10/1/2016, and then 9/30 9/30,
Actually, 10
20.
1 2015.
2015.
And then 9/30 2016.
So they will like type it in. That puts it into this range called custom. So that means if I run this report today, it will pull the data from 10/1/2015 to 9/30/2016. But let's say it's 10/1/2016, and I want to run this report, and I want to see it from 2016 to 2017 now. I want it to always show me the current year, right? Or the next year, the next fiscal year. It's not going to do that. It's not going to dynamically update. So if I'm out of this range and I want to see something for next fiscal year, but today is actually October 1st, 2016, this report's going to show me last year's information now instead of next year's, which is what's relevant. So instead of typing in a date, it's best practice to use this pick list and choose something in here that is relevant. So next fiscal year, we'll set it to those dates that you had depicted in your mind. But now when it's October 1st, 2016, this is going to change. And it's going to change this to 10/1/2016 to 9/30/2017 automatically for you.
So
you don't.
So it will say next FY.
It'll say next FY, and it will just dynamically shift. So you would only have to build this report once, and your user could use it every year for the rest of forever. Whereas otherwise, you would have to build this report or clone it every year and then adjust the dates and be like, okay, here's your, the next year's because the other one now is last year's. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Okay.
And on a side note, knowing fields is important, critically important for this because we don't actually do close door opportunities on close date. We do them on the publish date, insertion order date.
There you go.
So what we were running to when we were first doing this, when I first came here, everyone's like, oh, but this report says this, and this report says this, and it was
different dates.
From close date and not insertion order date.
Right.
So for here,
so then we would come down.
Use insertion order date. It's little things like that.
Okay.
Yep. And see how much data just populated before we had one record.
Okay, that's right.
Okay.
And can we put in the sales rep name? We drop them in.
Yeah, let's actually go ahead and just start with like what would you want to see. So I'm going to remove all columns, and we're going to start with a blank canvas. So we want op name, and then you want salesperson name.
Yes.
So
this would be opportunity owner.
It would be. So I was just checking to see what it's called here because sales rep is on the company,
Right.
but I think it's called owner for opportunities. And again, it would be helpful if I probably just opened up an opportunity. So why don't we just do that? This one's advertising. That way we can look at what things are called. Okay, so what else would you want to see here?
Journal. The title of the journal. Journal title.
So this is again where it gets tricky, right? It's like, is it journals? Is it journal title? Is it, which one is it? So we'd go back and you kind of said journal, and then you said, oh wait, it's journal title to specify, and it is. So that one's okay.
You might never field cleanup.
It is.
Believe me, I walked into that, I was like,
I know. We logged in the first time, and I was like, oh gosh.
So then can we do print? Is print there? And on the microsite, print.
So let's look at this. Where would you see it on here? Here's microsite advertising. Is that what you're looking for?
if we're looking, are you looking for the rates?
Yeah, I'm trying to, I want to put in each product that we sell.
Okay.
So it would be microsite rate, I guess, print net price.
Yep. So let's do rate.
So yeah, all of our products in this view have custom fields.
Custom fields.
So
yeah.
we have to drag
each one of them in. So we would do banner rate and highlights rate. I don't know if I'm pulling the right ones on that you would care about, but so there's a bunch of different rates now.
Skyscraper.
Skyscraper.
This guy created millions of fields and we've never used them.
Yeah.
Ever.
They're blank.
They're literally.
And is there any way in this report, because usually I'll export this into Excel and then I can sort.
Yep.
Can you, because it always gives me random, it's never alphabetical.
Yep.
Can you do this by rep?
Absolutely.
Or,
so we can just click on opportunity owner and it sorts it.
oh my gosh, great.
You just click on it once it'll sort it in one direction. So it looks like it's doing it by first name alphabetically. And then if you want to sort the opposite direction, you just click it again, and then it will go descending. So starting at V, going backwards. And you can do that for any column. If you were like, oh, I want to sort by journal title, so click on that one. It only lets you sort by one column, though, so you got to pick which one you care about.
Jen, do you, since I never use these reports, do you ever use, like, when you look at a report like this, do you want to see, okay, Jane Wolf, big data, what product is, not product, but what are they advertising? Because that's something that I know I'm going to need.
Well,
Do
the
you
way
use
I do it is where's the customize button? I hit the
Yep. So
Oh,
we're
wonderful.
already in the customized screen, but I can show what you're describing. It might take a second to run.
It's like what the actual ad is.
Right.
If somebody put that in.
So what I do
So
is
here's the customize
I'll
button.
customize, and then I'll drag the what I'm looking for up into the gray area, and so then I'll type in Jane Wolf, and then it will only show me Jane Wolf. If I want to go to AIVT, then I drag up journal title,
Yep, you can do
and
that.
I put in AIVT, and it'll
So-
show me everything Jane that's associated with AIVT.
So what she's talking about is filters.
Yeah.
There's two ways of doing it. You can either just drop this list down and click add field filter and then choose what you want from here, or you can drag and drop it. So I can drag and drop opportunity owner into this where it says to add filters, click add, drop it in, and then type in the person's name. You have to remember to get it exact. So I have to make sure that it's spelled correctly there. So now I'm only seeing Jane Wolf, and then I can also add another filter like you said, so journal title maybe is another one. Drag and drop that one in and say equals big data. And it will filter it so you only see those ones.
I guess what I'm looking for is, say, Apple bought an ad in big data. Where am I going to see that information? Like the actual
The customer?
The company?
product.
Yeah.
Good question. So
Apple's
that
running
would be
an ad.
company name. So that would be, we would want to add this onto our report. And what I'd probably really even want to do is group by it and say, okay, I want to see all the opportunities by company. That might be helpful. Or if you only care about the ones where Apple bought something, then you could leave it here and just add company name as a filter. And if you don't know the exact company name, we could try contains Apple and see what we get. I get nothing for these metrics, but that's along the lines of what you could do.
And then since Apple has so many products, how do I find, like, would that show up? Because that's what Jane wants me to do a lot, and that's where I'm getting stuck. And I know that's a total different
Well, her product
report.
field would have to be populated. She would have to fill it in if you wanted the product.
And every
yeah.
ad rep would.
But I think for Jane, she has just one field, special sales products, so it's just multi-select pick list. So if you drag that field in, it'll give you whatever product she selected for the opportunity.
Yeah, so we could do special, let's see, would you call it special sales
Package of interest.
package of interest? So we could drag that up here. Because it's a multi-select, I believe we have to do an includes. And then you can type, see, this is where it gets tricky with multi-selects, which is what we were talking about earlier today. Is we have to go and figure out what are the values in there. So if we're on this, we can click edit on it and look at what values are in that multi-select. Where is the special? So here we go. So if we know we wanted ebooks, then I can type in ebooks and then comma, if I wanted to also look at e-newsletters, I believe you separate them by comma. It might be semicolon. So let me just try it and see what happens. And let me open this up. I'm just going to look at all time and see if I get any returns. And I'm going to add that field on here. Yeah, so it's returning things that contain that. So it's not only going to be newsletters, but it means that you did sell newsletters in one of these, in the deal. But
Important to note if you selected in the filter not includes but only e-newsletters, you'd be excluding all the opportunities that e-newsletters hang around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is why includes becomes important, because otherwise now you're only going to see the ones. Yeah.
when we were marrying the data between what Salesforce had and what you guys had, that was one of my biggest issues. And I was sitting there, I was like, why isn't this working? No, it's included.
Includes, yeah. That's helpful for things like multi-select pick lists or names, like you can use contains. So if you don't know the whole name, but you can use part of it, I know it has this word in it, contains that. There's other things that can be helpful too, is right now we're just using and logic. So, if we wanted to say that this was true and the owner was, whatever is, we tried that before. So we could say, includes this and the opportunity equals joy, whatever. That's and logic. But we also can add additional logic, which you can pull in from this add menu. So you can use or logic. So if you wanted to say, I want to see all the opportunities that are closed won in the last year, or anything open this month, or something crazy, then you could add in your own custom logic to do that.
And how would you do that?
So let's pick a better example of what I just said. I'm trying to think of something we might want to see. So what if we wanted to see anything that was, I'm trying to think. Since I cleared out all my filters, what I'll do is stage. So anything that equals closed won. And then I'm also going to add another one. So this one's going to be weird because then I'm going to do stage equals close lost. So let's pretend we're doing a ratio report. And I want to see the ratio of all opportunities, the total number of opportunities that we won this year versus we lost this year, right? So right now we see no data because this is saying and you can't have an opportunity that's both won and lost at the same time. So that's why you see no data. So that's when we would need to add filter logic. So I only want to see data that's won or is lost. I want to exclude everything else. So what you do is this, and click OK. So now we can pull stage into our grouping, and then pull in the total amount field. And now we can see the comparison of how much money we won versus how much money we lost.
So cool.
And if we do this in a chart, we could do it in percentages, right? So if we wanted to say, I want to see a pie chart that shows us, the sum of amount, but with percentages and not the actual values. Now you can see 8% of the business you lost, 92% of it you won.
So I was writing a note. How'd you pull up the chart?
Sure, I'll just do it one more time. So anytime you're grouping by something, this add chart button will appear. If you're not grouping by anything, it won't show up. So because we grouped by stage, now we can click add chart. And then you can choose the type of chart you want. I chose a pie. You can choose, do you want to do it by total number of records, or do you want to do it by sum of amount? And the reason we get that option is because we summarize by it, by doing this and clicking that box. If I deselect that and I add chart, my only option is record count. So the reason you would, summarize different fields in here would be so that they are options in a chart. So if you wanted to see average in a chart, you would have to select average here. Or if you wanted to see max in a chart, you'd have. So there's various, different things you can do to have it display. So then I chose, I want a pie chart. I'm, going to show it by stage, group it by amount, and then instead there's two different tabs in the chart editor. There's chart data, and then there's formatting. So I could add a chart title, so I could call this win-lose ratio. And then I can choose what I want to show on here, and we'll show you a little preview of what it looks like. And maybe I just want to show the percentages, or maybe I also want to enable hover, or maybe I want it to show up below my report instead of on top of my report, etc. So now it's below. I can see percentages. I enabled hover, so now if I hover over it, I can see not only the percentage, but the amount. But at least at a glance, I only see percentage, so I don't see a bunch of stuff cluttering it up. So there's kind of different options. And again, this is only showing us 20 records. Let's run this and actually see what it would show us, because it's probably skewing our win-lose ratio chart here. And another thing that's kind of cool, when I get to run, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many things to scroll all the way down to that chart, right? I can click hide details. It'll shrink it up for me and just group it into the two categories that I segmented by, and then I can view it here. So 9% and 91% across the entire system for any status, So it's like you could add whatever filters you want, but that's just an example of a or statement.
I think we're really successful when people are going back to the pipeline for what's lost.
Right. Yeah, they're probably just leaving it in like prospecting from 7 years ago.
Well, no, all of our data is usually segmented by current fiscal year, but I mean, people aren't actively using the system long enough to be like, oh, this pipeline I lost. And
Yeah.
Those lost data just forever sit at 70%.
Right. So maybe we want to do a closed one and things in 70% that are older than a certain time frame, by age. If the opportunity's been created for 30 days, then fine, it's still, good. But if it's been created for 100 days, then maybe it's not. Yeah. So like there's like an age category in here as well. So like you can group by, let me show details. So we can pull age on. So this shows you the number of days something has been in the system, 336 days for this one, 114 days. So you can get a sense of like, how old is this stuff?
Wow. So that would be good, like, let's say you're doing a probability report, and exactly like, I see things on somebody's report that's been sitting there, so I can just drag in the age. And then see how long it's been there, and then say, hey, this has been sitting here for 60 days. It's
not necessarily by stage, so you just got to remember that it's not like they never modified it, right? This is since they created it. So it's like, it's, 336 days since they created it. Doesn't mean they never touched it again. It just, you probably want to use this in conjunction with a last modified, so pull that on too, and then be like, I want to see, and then put that into your filters, right? So we'd say, I want to see anything that is in, a specific stage, or has been, let's say, not last modified in the last certain number of days. Let's see, so Salesforce is tricky with dates. Less than means before a date, and greater than means after a date. So in my mind, that's a little bit backwards. Sometimes I'm like, oh, well, it was before, so it's greater than, but it's not. It's less than because it was prior. So if we want to say not last modified, or last modified less than a certain day, you could say, last month. So we could choose 8. Oops, I don't know how long people have been in the system, but we could say last modified before this day, and the age is greater than, let's say 30 days. And then that'll give us a report to say, let me pull last modified date on here. So now we can see these ones were edited, last in July, and these ones are over 2,000 old. But these ones, and the ones in customer recorded. So it's not even a one opportunity. Like maybe you don't care how old the one opportunities are because they're already one. So we say open only. So you can get a sense of, people aren't modifying things. It just kind of shows you.
So how would you clean that up? You just make it close lost, or done with it,
That's a good question. I mean, you could send this report or print it out and give it to the sales rep. Like you could do this by sales rep. You could say, here's a bunch of things that haven't been modified, and this is how old they are. Like, are these even valid opportunities anymore? Right. And if they say no, make them close lost. If they say yeah, then be like, okay, well then let's update the stages to like what they belong at, and let's get some activities going. Let's call them. Another thing we could add in here is last activity date, because this last modified doesn't include phone calls. So maybe, they are making phone calls, they're just not editing the opportunity, like itself.
Right. Uh-huh.
So we could include that in here too. Like, and last activity is less than 8/1/15. So that changes things a little bit, and then we can pull last activity on here so we can see the exact date. So the last activity on these ones was 2013 for like task like logging a call or sending an email was 2013, but they did modify it in 2015. So that's why you kind of got to look at them in conjunction.
So just to know for you guys, if you ever have to like build reports like this and custom like ad hoc reporting for people you manage, in Squid, I can pretty much simulate whatever's on these types of reports, but I have a data table that live updates based on filters. So if we wanted to create, something that's saying what's activity looking like under opportunities, we want to filter by activities that haven't been touched in the past like 30 days or something. If you guys send me a report structure like this, telling me exactly what they want to see, I can create a Squid page that they can link to from their homepage that'll look exactly like this, and you don't have to pull from reporting ever again. That they just log into their homepage and they see this.
So it's just constantly updating.
Constantly updating, and they can make live changes in it. So, the reporting, I like reporting, but what I don't like is you can't really make any actionable changes from, right here or even from reports. You have to export and then import back in. With the Squid tables, if I can get reports from you guys that your reps want to see, I can simulate these into Squid and they can interact with these reports in live time. That's going to be where we find a lot of value from these types of things.
Right. It's like rather than like they would see a report in this format and then they'd be like, oh, wait, I want to change this date, but I don't know how to do it. They would have to click customize and then they'd have to go in and click edit. So if you do find things that it's like they frequently want to see this information, that's when you want to get it into Squid. If it's just like a one-time thing where it's like, oh, I want to see this today, but I don't really care about it, then you can just build it and then, use it that one time, throw it away.
Like one example I made with that was the opportunities without insertion order dates. It basically took all the opportunities a sales rep had in the current fiscal year that were marked as closed won that didn't have an insertion order date, so they weren't getting marked as closed won. That report was basically a tab that users would click on and say, oh shoot, I forgot to add an insertion order date or publish date for this. It's not getting counted as closed won. I should probably do that. It's basically a way to error check. That report was for error check. Same with the stages. A lot of sales reps had opportunities, stages. So like if customer quoted is now 10%, they had customer quoted at like 16% or something. That wasn't really matching up. And for Squid, we do that based on like the percentages for the stages. So what that report pulls up is all the opportunities that have a stage that percentage doesn't match the stage. And all the person would have to do is go there, see, oh shoot, this is counted as customer quoted, but it's 20%. I'm gonna make that 10% now. It's basically allowing people to, do their own data cleanup instead of having you do all the data cleanup as last time. But we can think of like and brainstorm different ways to like give them reports that are gonna help them in the long run. I mean, we can even make this like company opportunity specific if you want.
Absolutely.
This is just maybe the framework of how I look at it.
Could we go over importing files?
Files.
Like an Excel file. So I have our sales reps, they go to meetings
Okay.
and they come back with business cards.
Okay.
And I have a card scan. So I scan the card, it goes into a CSV file.
Yep.
Then I go to my import data wizard.
Yep.
And I match my fields. But I was actually, this is the part I haven't gotten yet. When I do it under me, and it's, let's say it's for Joy's, these are Joy's contacts, I have trouble putting them under Joy when it's under my login. And I tried this yesterday, actually it didn't work. I tried using record owner ID, the number, and and that wasn't working, so I did it again, including the sales rep column, because I saw that was on the contact page.
Yep.
So I included that, and it still went under me.
Okay. So let's take a look at that. Let me ask you this. So you're loading these as accounts and contacts, not as leads, right?
Yes. Okay. Contacts and companies.
Contacts and companies. Okay. So let me just pull together a dummy list that we can use. Okay, so let's just do like first name, last name, company name, title, whatever. And then we'll do owner. let me just do a save as on this. This is my downloads for now. Test, import, CSV. Okay. So let's actually open up. So I use a different tool than what you guys would normally use for import. So I don't remember off the top of my head if it wants owner ID or if it wants owner name. Yeah, I use the, yeah. So let me just double check here. So we'll open up the data import wizard. Launch the wizard. I seem to remember it wanted name, but they did change this recently. So that could not be true. Let me just check.
Well, when you export the data, it'll give you the ID.
When you export it.
Yeah, so when you import it, I always just do the ID. Just so I know.
But do you use the wizard or do you use data loader?
I use, what is it? I didn't start using the data loader because I couldn't install it on my computer. Stupid reason. I use a different app.
Dataloader.io.
I used them, but I used up all my records.
Yeah, they changed it. It used to be 100,000, now it's 50. They keep getting lower unless you want to pay for it.
I'm not paying for it.
I know. I do the same thing.
It's like some orange.
Because I seem to remember, so in the past, I have not used the data import wizard in a really long time, but this is the most simple tool to use for you guys, like on a regular basis. So I'll show you this. I just don't remember. It used to be you could not use IDs at all. Like data import wizard was specifically for end users. Data loader is like an administrator tool, and this was like, oh, we're tailoring this so that it's so easy that end user could do it. And so it used to always be by name, like account name, you'd have to put it in, not account ID, or owner name, not owner ID. So I just want to double check. I know they changed it recently, and I don't know if that's something that they changed, and that could be why you're experiencing a problem. So let me just see. Let's just test it out and see what happens. So I'm going to put in 2 columns, owner name and owner ID. Oops. So let's just put in a test run.
So what are the types of things that you two have been running into with your reps? Anything like error specific? Like, what is this?
The name of a person.
Well,
Generally, I mean, I don't.
no.
I'm trying
I mean,
to
other
use
than
it, but
the-
I don't use it
the-
all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm back and forth in it all week because I'm doing like media kits and stuff.
Yeah.
But the lead problem I was having that I addressed with you when I was trying to create Victoria a new lead,
Yeah.
and then also what I noticed yesterday when I did import all those contacts of Eric's, I was just searching and just spot checking to make sure, because I went in under him, but I was just searching and making sure the names came up. And when the contact page came up, I saw that the journal wasn't associated with the name anywhere. So, and that was something we flagged to you.
Okay. So what that was is when you imported the data back into the system, there are like 3 different journal fields. So you put that in for a different journal field. I can easily just export and then update so those fields go in. But what your field probably went into is like on the page, you're only seeing journal title. But what you probably imported into was journals.
No,
So,
I didn't actually, and that was, I guess that was my bad too. I didn't create a column for a journal,
yeah,
and I didn't put the
doesn't
name
have
in.
it. If the column doesn't have it in the Excel, then it won't go into the system.
Okay. But when Joy was doing it though, she didn't see the field either that to associate the contact with the journal.
So the problem is when you're exporting and importing, they're very field specific. So this information goes into this field, and if this field isn't displayed on the page, so like I said, there are 3 different types. There are 3 different journal fields. So the page you're seeing only has 1 of 3 journal fields. If you accidentally imported into one of the two of the journal fields that didn't exist on the page, that information is going to show up. So a perfect example, when I was doing an import, there are 2 sets of addresses. There are the standard Salesforce billing address, billing city, billing country, And then there's the custom ones that that guy made. I don't know why, but we're using those. And so when I was importing it, I would import all this data, but I wouldn't see it anywhere. And that's because the page was displaying the Salesforce standard billing country, billing city. When I imported into the custom billing country, billing city. So when I edited the page and brought those fields into view, the data's there. The point is the data exists. It's just not showing up because the field isn't matched on the page. It's like those are the confusing things that.
Yeah, it's got to be really precise.
Yeah, it has to be exactly precise.
I've never used this function. I have no idea why.
Okay, well, I can actually back up a step here and show you where it is. So all I did was go to my name and click Setup. And then in the left-hand sidebar, I knew it was called like Data Import Wizard or something like that. So I just typed in data and waited to see what came up. So it is here. It's under Import, Data Import Wizard.
My other question is, I have an Excel file that I need to import, also from a meeting, but it's just it's an exhibit program book, so it lists the company and the contact information, everything. I mean, the address information, everything but a person's name. Can I import just companies without having contacts?
Yes. Even through this process, you would just leave the contact piece blank and it wouldn't create any.
Now, how do I do that?
So let's go ahead and launch this. You still have to choose companies and contacts, unless you want to load them as leads. But if you want them actually loaded as companies in the system, you would choose that. You choose whether you're adding new, updating, or doing both. That depends. If you think the list could include some that are already in there, then you might want to choose both.
Yep.
So that's where it doesn't actually usually ask you. I guess now it does have the option for ID. It used to always be done by only name from this menu. So you had to choose, and it was like always you had to make sure the name matched exactly. So this is match contact by name, or Salesforce ID or email. So it depends on what you have in here. I would look and say, okay, well I have names, so I want to do it by name. I don't even have email address or the contact ID. So let me go back.
But I don't even have a name. I just have a company.
Right, you still have to select something here.
Okay.
But you just won't have any in there, and so you won't match them. Then it says, do you want to match by company name or Salesforce ID? Probably if you're getting this from a trade show, you're not going to have the Salesforce ID, so you're going to go by name. And then it says, what do you want to do if it finds it? Do you want to update the existing account information? Well, yes, I do. And then it says, which company field in your data file do you match against for associated agency lookup field? If you don't even have agency lookup field in here, then you don't even need to select this. Same for this one, and this one. Trigger workflow rules. So this one's interesting. Sometimes there's workflow rules in the system, and what those are ways of automating some information from being updated after some action is taken. So like, for example, I don't know if there's any in there for advertisers, but for example, on the subscriber side, we have a workflow rule in there that updates opportunity name. That way, everybody's opportunity names are standardized. So when somebody creates an opportunity, if you were to import an opportunity, we would want that workflow rule to trigger because we want the opportunity name, even though if you might have it in this file, you want it to be standardized. So they could type in opportunity number 1, and as soon as they save it, or as soon as you import it, checking that box would fire a rule that says, no, it can't be called opportunity 1. It's got to be customer name dash, the format of the thing you're selling dash the date. And so it would override it. So this is important if there are things like that in the system for the data you're importing. And it's hard to tell unless you're an admin and you can go and look at workflow rules and stuff like that. But typically I like to just check it, but it's really dependent on whether or not you want things like that to fire. One reason you wouldn't want it to fire is if you had a workflow rule in the system that automatically sent an email out to everyone in the database for every record that got created. You wouldn't want to check it then, because then you're loading in 100 records and people are going to get 100 emails, right? So you got to kind of be precise here. It depends on what you have in the system. Did that spur a thought, Eric?
I just would stay away.
So don't check it. Okay.
Yeah,
I never check it.
So don't check it.
Never
I never check it. Can you hit let's see, record type
all?
Yeah.
Yep.
Remember that time when I imported that data and it skewed everything? That's because of the workflow.
What's
When I imported the data and all of the amounts changed, I spent 3 days locked in that
Oh my God.
Yeah, that was that. I learned my lesson.
Sometimes it can be helpful, sometimes it's not. So yeah.
It
And
was scary, but I knew I was confident the information was not lost.
and data loader though,
Forever.
this one at least asks you. Data loader will not ask you. It just fires. So usually a best practice when using the data loader, and that's why this is for end users.
Uh-huh.
And data loader is not. Like we don't teach anybody that unless you're like a very advanced administrator, because like you can mess up things up royally. This is like, okay, there's like steps in place to like prevent things. But usually it's a best practice to deactivate any workflow rules before you do a data job and then reactivate them when you're done. Okay, so we are choosing all. So let's click next. Oh, actually it wants me to do my file first. So I need to drag and drop my file here. Let's see, I saved it in downloads. There it is. Drag and drop.
You ever use Jitterbit data loader?
No, but I know Jitterbit.
It's just it's a nightmare. I use this for that.
Well, this is good for importing. It's very basic though. You might need to do more advanced things. Like you can't delete records from here at all. You can't, like this is just like basic imports, and it only does companies, contacts, leads, and
What
custom
solution?
objects.
Yeah,
That's another standard object in the system. You guys aren't using it. It's for case management. Like if you were using Salesforce to log cases with a support team, you could log solutions to their problems, and then you could be like, if I was a support person, I'd be like, oh, this problem has happened before. Let me go look at the solution to it last time.
Okay.
But
Gotcha.
it's not relevant for what you guys are doing.
So for this side, add
yes.
new records is update or insert, update, and upsert, I'd assume.
And there's a limit of only 50,000 records at a time. Data loader, you can do whatever you want. So this one's like, for small things, this works. I prefer data loader for big things, like a full-time admin job. Okay, so let's click next here. Let me have our file. I can't tell if it's going. Let's try it again. All right, now it went. So I did have things in my file for contact. So I just want to make sure I'm going to remove those because we're pretending that we don't. So let's see here. Company. So I'm going to change this, and I'm going to do. There should be an option to not map somewhere. They did change the way this happens. Map your title field. Maybe it's not here. Unmapped.
Might be on the wrong one.
Well, this one's unmapped, but it did map to owner, which is nice. There used to be a way to unmap something from in here, and they changed it, so you might not be able to anymore. So I guess the best practice would be if you don't want to map something, don't put it in the Excel. But let me just do that so that, let me go back a step, so that you can see what it would look like if we didn't have contact information.
What I was doing wrong was in my file, I still had the first name and the last name columns.
And it was forcing you.
And I was like,
There used to be a way to not do that. I don't know why they would have gotten rid of that. You'd think that would be helpful. Let's try it again. So now it's mapping only to company. And it's not mapping this one because it is mapping owner ID. I'm going to import this record, and we'll delete it after, because I just want to make sure that it does tie it to Joy and not me, because you said that was a problem, right?
well, we're not logged in as Joy right now, right?
No, I'm logged in as
Okay.
VennScience.
Okay.
So it should tie it to Joy. Let's see. It's not map.
Now that owner ID is
It's interesting.
sorted,
It does want me to map this. Let's just see what it does. It's called sales rep, I thought. Would have been helpful if I could search in here. Oh, I can. Sales, previous sales rep. No, that's contact sales rep.
Control find.
Yeah, I just Control F. Okay, so we want to delete that column, I guess, because we can't unmap things, apparently. So go back again. Let me make sure I save this. So they've made this even more cumbersome than I feel like it used to be. So now we'll try that one more time. Yeah. So now let's click next. Now what? It's required for an update. Field whose name is not mapped. It is mapped.
I think they're relating to contact name.
Is the phone? They're in twice, maybe? Is that why? Let's see how it says company phone, contact phone, company record over contact record.
Possibly? Oh, that's a great point. So it should only be company phone. So let's go through and find company phone and see if we can select it by itself. God, they've made this worse. Leave it to Salesforce to mess with stuff. Okay. Oh, here, this is actually how you do it. You can deselect. So it checks the box next to the things it's mapped to, and you can uncheck the box.
Okay.
So let me go ahead and do another Control F phone. Contact phone we don't want to map. And then there we go. So now we can change this one and get rid of owner. We want that one, but we don't want that one. So deselect it. Map. There we go. So I guess you don't have to delete it out of your Excel. They just change the way you deselect.
So this note, pay close attention to the fields you're mapping to, because
Yes.
once it maps into the system, it's a pain to go back and make changes. So if you had mapped the company phone over and
Yep.
you were overriding a company that existed, every single company that you imported into would now show that one contact's phone number as the main
Yep.
phone number. So you'd be, compromising data integrity that way.
Yeah, like how does that work? Like exactly like with them.
Yeah.
So when we
Data is scary, and that's why they give you this piece, and then there's the data loader, which does like all this, which is like, you could really mess something up.
Yeah.
So if-
like triple, quadruple check.
So if they're like, so let's say I have this big list of 300 companies, and some are going to be new, and some we have in there already.
Mhm.
So let's say, but we'll have multiple records. Let's say Roche, they'll be in there 5 times,
Mhm.
and maybe different addresses.
Yep.
So when I click on add new ones and update existing ones,
Mhm.
what is it actually updating?
It's-
There's,
That one, that would make me say you probably don't want to
Don't
ever
do that.
update, because it's going to go off a name. And it's probably a fuzzy match name, so it's going to go, oh, this looks kind of like it, and it's going to update it, and it's not going to be exact. That's why Salesforce ID is more important, like for usually how you're doing it. Probably just import directly. You can always merge later if there's a duplicate. If somebody's like, oh, wait, this already exists, we can merge it, and then that's not a problem.
That's why I was saying use the ID number, because out of
Yeah.
all 30 of those Roches, every single one of them has an individual ID number.
I mean, something that you could do, it would be tedious on your part, but something you could do is when you get one of those lists is search for each of those companies in Salesforce, like type in that company name and see what comes up in Salesforce. If something comes up, get the ID for it and paste it in your Excel file next to it.
Okay.
But you would have to do it for every single one. If there's thousands, that's a problem.
Small
If
list
there's
that would work.
20,
Right.
you could do
Okay.
that.
Cool.
And then be like, okay, I'm going to update based on this ID because I already found
Okay.
the exact one.
Here, I actually have a perfect use case, which you two are definitely going to use at some point. In the home page, you can segment the data by closed one or pipeline or however you need to. At the bottom, there's an export button. And when you export it gives you all the fields, all the columns, but it also gives you the ID for that. So let's say you want to mass update, a segmented part of that list. So if someone's saying, I want to see all of my biotech journals and all of my zebrafish journals. I'm just making stuff up. And then you have to mass update something specifically on there. Or if you want to just update a lot of records at once, you export that data table into Excel, make whatever necessary changes you want on there. Or even if you wanted to add a field, you can add a column and then make whatever changes you need to there. And then when you import it back into the system, you wouldn't have to worry about which Roche you're updating to, because you're going to use that ID number as the key to update.
Yeah.
So that would be what you guys would end up doing. So like, if you needed to, let's say you needed to change the special sales package of interest. We want to rename the special sales package of interest. we figure out a different way to do it. But if you had to, you could search by all special sales, whatever the package of interest is, export that data, and then change it on the Excel, and when you import it back in, you don't have to worry about any of the fuzzy logic. Roche sounds like Roche 1, so we're going to update Roche 1 when really you needed to update Roche. Working by IDs is the safest way.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Mess anything up.
Okay.
So kind of what he's describing, either you could have a master list that he produces and you keep and you use that as like your, let me go check that list, or you can run a report that pulls the ID in and then click export and get the most up-to-date information. So like maybe there's a new Roche in the system you didn't know about before because somebody created another one. So you could run a report and then say, I want to see, all the companies. Let's see, why is it not showing data? Showing details, all companies. Oh, I clicked the wrong report type, that's why. I meant this one. I'm going to remove all columns again, and I'm going to pull ID. So company ID, and then all companies, all time, and name. And maybe address is important because you want to see which location it is, right? So, and again, this is that billing address, shipping address thing he was talking about, how there's like a few of them.
And mailing. There's mailing, there's billing, there's shipping.
Right? So it's like, well, which one? Is it billing street, or is it billing address line 1? It's got to be consolidated at some point. At some point, we've got to get into these standard, the real fields that you should be using. But in the interim, you'll have to just like pull them all on and like figure out which one has the data in it and then get rid of the other ones. But that way, then you can kind of distinguish. Then when you run this report, you can export it and use that as your guideline. So if you have this new list you need to load in, you search your exported version of this for that name, you look, find like the location and be like, oh, yep, this is the same one, copy this ID, paste it in your other file. And then you have a list of all, the ones that do exist, and then the company ID would be blank for any new ones. So when you update, it would, if it finds a match on a company ID, it would update that one, otherwise it would insert it. Brand new. The import wizard, again, is still, let me actually see if it ran, because it kind of just doesn't really tell you. Oh, I didn't start, that's why. It doesn't even usually tell you, though, because it usually queues it up. So it's like, this will run, but we don't know when it's going to be done. Like, it started, but like,
it's actually
who knows?
Pretty quick.
Sometimes it is.
It'll basically say, yeah, it's taken a while, we'll tell you when it's done.
But it's different from the data loader, because the data loader will tell you, you're doing this right now and here's the progress. This doesn't. This is server-based. So because Salesforce is a server system, it tells you which server you're on up in the URL. You're on NA5. So are a billion other customers of Salesforce, right? So if everyone on this server on NA5 is using this at the exact same time, well, you're getting in line and you're waiting for everybody else's to be done before yours will be. So sometimes it's really fast. You're like, oh, wow, it's done, because nobody else was in line yet. But if it's like a busy day and everybody's like loading 50,000 records like at a time, you're going to be waiting a while. So it does send you an email when it's done too. So, if it doesn't show up right away. This one does tell me I processed one of these. So let's go ahead and view our result. So it created this guy. So let's go find him. The way I find him is I get the ID and back in Salesforce. Type it in right here. So everything has an ID number, like right at the end here. So you just paste it over that, click go. It'll find me the record. Oh, cool. And look, sales rep is Joy. So it loaded it against her and not me.
Same thing like with user ID. If you ever need the digits for user ID, just go to the user profile, that number. If you need record type ID, actually you never need a record type ID, so scratch that.
Yeah, same thing. That's how I got Joy's. I went to Joy's user record, and then I went, oh, there's her ID. Copy, paste. It's always in the URL.
Anything before the question mark.
Stop at the question mark.
Stop the question mark. Yeah.
Yep. I think for this one, so there's a couple different IDs. And for the data, the import wizard that you're using, it won't matter which one you use. But for you in the data loader, If you're importing data, it doesn't matter. But if you're manipulating data, like using VLOOKUPs to like match things together and stuff, VLOOKUPs are not case sensitive. So the way Salesforce's IDs up in the URL are done is it's 15 characters. So, but it's unique because there's some uppercase letters and lowercase letters. But it's not unique in that there could be another record in the system with a lowercase m. If you export the 15 character digit IDs and you do a VLOOKUP, it's gonna think that the lowercase m and the uppercase m are the same thing, and you're gonna match data into the wrong spots. So I always create a custom field that shows me the 18 character digit ID, which is unique 100%, all 18 characters, and I use this one for the data loader. And that's just for updating and like matching purposes. If you're just importing something brand new, it won't matter. But
ironic you say that. Like a month ago, I was experimenting with VLOOKUPs and changing, and I had like a subset of my data. I'm like, why are these matching? And it was
yeah, it's like they have nothing to do with each other.
20% of what I saw, like more like 15. I never figured it out.
Yep,
now
that's why. So I always you can create a formula field, and there's a little parameter called case safe ID, and it pulls in the 18 character digit ID. So I always add that to my objects that I'm going to be doing data on. Yeah, little nuances. They're frustrating.
That's why I learned mistakes.
That's what I've been there. Been there. Best practice again before doing any data. Even for you guys, if you're loading something and you're afraid you're gonna mess something up, do a data export just in case. And to do that, under your name in the setup menu, there's a section in here for export, and you can run a data export in here. It's probably even a good idea, Eric, to schedule one of these. That way it runs weekly, so at least you have some semblance of a backup. But you can click export now and include the documents. Will include like everything in the system. It can take a while to export though. So you want to wait for the export to be done before you do your data job. Otherwise, you don't have a backup. You have whatever it was in the middle of your changes. So it'll email you when the export's done and say, hey, the export's done. Then you can go and download it, keep it as a backup copy, and then you go and do your data job. And if something goes wrong, you have a backup copy. It's not as simple as just like, oh, reinstate backup copy, like let me click a button. It's like you have to delete everything in the system and like go through and recreate everything, and it's a pain, but at least you have somewhere to go to, and you have, instead of nothing, you're like, oh my god, the whole system's blown up and I have no way to get back. You want a way to get back, even if it's a pain to implement.
Would we really be using that though? Would that be useful to us?
Yes, anytime you're loading a list, you should do this.
Anytime you're loading a list, export the data, because I'll tell you this, when I made that mistake, the way I did it, you're going to hate me for saying this. I went through my recently changed on my chatter, and I went one by one, changing them back.
Yep.
It was a nightmare.
So
It was a nightmare. It was like thousands of records.
So that Excel file that I have
Yep.
with the new companies and let's say new contacts, I put it into Salesforce.
Before you put it in Salesforce.
Before I put it in Salesforce, I'm exporting.
You export. It's basically just saying.
What am I exporting?
Everything. The entire system. All the data that exists. And the reason is because if you import that list and you update, say you forgot to add the Salesforce IDs in there, and it just updates every single Roche account with a phone number that's not accurate. How do you get back to what it was before? You don't know what it was before. So this exports everything. And then it tells you when it's done. It'll send you an email and say, I've done export, being done exported. You go in here, there'll be a link in the email. You click the link. Then there's a download button. You download the export because it's only good for 48 hours. So if you don't download it within the 48 hours that it finished, it'll be gone. So you download it, save it somewhere on your computer. Then you import your list, your new list. That way, if you realize something went horribly wrong, you have somewhere to go back to. You have that other data to say, this is what it was before. We need to put it back.
Okay.
Got it?
Is it advisable to kind of like date it and just save it somewhere?
Yes.
On your computer. So
save it somewhere. If you guys have a company server, save it, like have a folder dedicated to backups or something.
Okay.
Well, I was going to say, we have backups. We use a proprietary system up here. We don't actually export. Oh, wait, this is it.
Oh, yeah, here you go. You do schedule.
I think we schedule it every Sunday.
Okay, that's good. and then it lasts for 2 days and then it's gone. But at least you have something to go back to, even if it's not like last week's data, maybe it's the weeks before, but that's better than what it is now, so.
Better than having one 3 months ago.
Right. Exactly. So,
okay, so, but if that's all, if I'm exporting all that information and I'm comparing it to what I imported, like.
you don't need to compare it. You just want to save it somewhere.
Okay.
Because,
just in case.
because if, yes, just in case. And if all of a sudden you get an email that says like, because you'll see that you last modified records.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody will be like, all my data is wrong. Who last modified this? It will say you. And then they'll say, did you do something? Like, did you upload a list yesterday? And then you'll be like, yeah, I did. And they'll be like, something went wrong. Okay, let's look at that data that you exported. And then you'd go to it. But it would only be for that instance. Like, hopefully that never happens. It's just that like security blanket in the case it does. Let me think. What else? What other problems do you guys face like in a regular day that like?
Let's see, but that's basically what I do for the reps is import the lists, run reports.
Yep.
Enter details. I also enter insertion orders.
Okay.
If I don't see one in there, if maybe a rep didn't put it into the Salesforce, sometimes I'll just do it.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, I'm
How
trying
I
to
use
think
it.
what other situations you guys run into. Because a lot of this stuff is just really figuring out what can I do and what am I just going to send to Eric. But
Right.
if it's adding a field, I have to add a field.
Currently, I'm updating leads and cross-referencing them, and some of them might be under like Zoe, and I can't change the name. I've run into that.
Can't change the owner.
Yeah, and like she no longer works.
As an admin, you should be able to.
Yeah, it's not giving me that access. So.
Hang on, let me look at
Because
Zoe's no longer
I
a
can
user.
change an owner.
She's deactive.
I have actually a question too.
Okay.
Oh, which I think, okay, now it makes sense.
Just look at admin users.
So let's say, David Brownstein, he's no longer here. So now whatever is under David Brownstein, now Eric Braunstein owns. But there's still many records under David Brownstein that I want to get under Eric.
Okay. That's a good one. I also want to talk about yours too in a second here because your name's Carrie?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's not an admin.
We cloned the admin account and made them, I think it's beta testing. That was just a temporary measure.
Yep.
And I had to do that literally on the fly.
Yes. That could be what's causing her issue because I think only admins can change the owner of a lead.
Okay.
So because you're not an admin, you're probably getting that error.
Okay.
But if you change her back to an admin, then she should be able to do it.
You can be, you
I
can.
think what she
If you're
has,
admin, you
we
just click on
cloned the
right there.
admin account. Beta
Mhm.
testing is a mirror image of what permissions admin.
But I
now,
think it's a validation rule that's
Everything
preventing.
that's Zoe,
Let me look at the
That
book.
would, yeah.
And
Tell
so
us
you're
what to do. Everything
validating
that's
only on
Zoe,
system admin profile
we
and
can
not
change
on
over
beta
to
tester
Jane.
profile, so she's getting the error.
she's going to tell us. So
Yeah,
I have the
I
same
should
problem.
disable all those validations.
Okay.
Because
That's-
they were made by that guy.
I'm going.
Right,
I'm
it's-
validating.
Yeah, see, he's put in the
context, so
profile
it's
ID. So if you're not the system admin with that profile ID, you're going to get the error.
And since I can't change
Um,
the owner from Zoe
We're
to
gonna
Jane, I'm
do the,
gonna change that.
permissions and the user accounts. I guess, so that I have a
You're
chance.
saying
Oh,
you
no,
need to
Jen.
click one.
The subscriber ones should be okay.
Subscriber ones, yeah.
Because that's
I'm sure those.
you can't
Okay.
possibly go in each one and change it, right?
Owners, validation.
Yeah.
There's got to be a way to just pick.
Well, this will be
Zoe
why
and change
she's
it over
getting
to
the
Jane.
error. Then your question was, how do we mass transfer things that is under somebody old that you want to move
Right.
to somebody new? There's a way to do that too. So in the setup menu again, we go to our name, setup, and then in the sidebar, we're just going to type in transfer because I don't remember exactly what it's called.
Okay.
So you type in transfer, and then you see what comes up. And then we got here mass transfer records. That looks right. So we're going to click on that. And it's going to ask you, what do you want to transfer? And there's a list of things here that you can click on. There's a lot of stuff. Okay. Most commonly, you're probably transferring accounts, right?
I want to
companies.
transfer one name, David Brownstein, all his records to Eric Braunstein. Anything that David Brownstein owns, I want to make Eric Braunstein the new owner.
Gotcha. So you kind of have to do it by object. So things like you would have to do it for companies. I believe all the contacts will go over automatically with the company change. But we got transfer opportunities separate down here. Let's try companies first. That might do all of it. If
Okay.
not, then we might have to do opportunities separately.
Okay.
But let's go ahead and click transfer companies. So you transfer from the old person's name. Let's see, what was the person?
David Brownstein.
Right here.
Mm-hmm.
Transfer to new person.
Eric Ronstein.
Oh my God, those names are like almost exactly the same. So yeah, look, it asks you what do you want to transfer. So you say, I want to transfer open opportunities. You probably don't want to transfer closed opportunities because Eric did not close them. David did. So you leave those ones alone.
Okay.
You guys aren't using cases, you can ignore it. Account team, you're not using, ignore it. So really this only one is the top one that matters. Now we can filter even further down if we wanted to. So this is like, let's say David, who no longer is here, had a territory. Okay, say he owned New York. All of his accounts were New York based, right? And in the example, you didn't just hire one replacement, maybe you hired 2 people, and half of his records need to go to one person and half of them need to go to the other person by, I don't know, city, right?
Well, actually, we can do it by journal.
There you
that's
go.
Okay.
If there's a journal field on company, then you could.
There's not.
Then we wouldn't be able to do it by company. But we could say don't transfer opportunities. And so we could just transfer the companies, and then we could go to the opportunity level and do it by journal and transfer things differently. So that's why there's additional filters here, is you get to choose, like, what if I only want a sub portion of David's stuff to go to this new person, where I want the old stuff to go to some, other things to go to somebody else. You have that flexibility.
Right.
I'm not actually going to click go on anything. Like I'll find the stuff. I'm not going to actually transfer it because I don't want to mess anything up. If you guys haven't fully decided this is how you want to do it, but it will show you all of David's records, and so you can select either all, or you can go through and say cherry pick and say these are the ones I want to transfer.
And with this, what about David's contacts?
The contacts will automatically switch with the companies.
Okay, great.
You can only do 250 at a time. That's the caveat. So if he has 1,000 companies in here, you're gonna have to do this, a few times. But you'll just transfer them and then rerun this, and then there'll be less in here that he owned, and then you'll transfer them again, rerun it. Hopefully you don't have to transfer things all that often. It's just when one person leaves, hopefully you're not losing people every day. So it's like that would be really bad. So it is annoying, but you don't have to do this like all the time.
So in doing this, let's say David Brownstein was the owner of 4 journals: Pop, JPM, Bariatric, and Surgical. Now Eric sells 2 of them and Joy sells the other 2.
Yep.
We can break it out by that?
Yeah, I would,
journal?
instead of doing it on account, I would do it on opportunity. So let's go back. So I'm going to not choose by company. I'm going to choose transfer opportunities. And I'm going to say David and Eric. And then I'm going to add a few filters in here. Let's see. Looks like you can only do it by date.
Now, if you can only do 255, we have more than 255, would it make sense to
use the data loader?
Yeah, I was going to say that was...
That's absolutely probably what you would have to do for this, because it doesn't even look like you could do it by journal name at all. So if that is a criteria, you would create a report that shows all of David's information with the opportunity ID, and then you would send it to Eric and he would be able to update it. You'd say, I want all of these ones. You'd filter it by the journals. I want all of these ones to be transferred to Eric. I want all of these ones to be transferred to this person. And then he could make that update with the data loader.
Okay, great.
Okay. Anything else you guys run into?
Yeah, you guys aren't going to run into that many other types of errors. Most of that stuff has to be sent my way anyway, for now at least.
Yeah, there are other things that that we're going to be doing that we might need to know.
I mean, in the end, we're going to want you guys comfortable with Squid. So, like, if someone's missing a field or wants wants a field added, you guys would be able to add the field and then just send me an email saying, hey, advertising team wanted this field, we added it to this page, and I'm just like, okay, now I know it's there. But that's going to require some squid knowledge, and we're going to clean up the field so you guys don't see my mess of 30 different ways to do billing, which is a nightmare. So when you see a billing address, it's going to be a billing address. I wanted to make sure that's done before we even introduce you guys to the back end. Believe me, that takes weeks to figure out.
And Squid is kind of its own beast. It kind of almost deserves its own training. Because there's a lot of moving pieces. And with normal Salesforce, there's usually like a recovery path. Like if you delete a field in the back end, you can undelete that field and put it back. With Squid, like if you delete a page, it's gone. So there's definitely it's gonna need a little bit more time than let me just show you really quick. It's that simple. Just add a field. What happens if you delete something or you mess something up? There's no. So unless you're keeping a pretty frequently updated sandbox, I guess you'd have a way to go back. But other than that,
Here's my question. Totally just slipped out of my mind. How annoying. I hate when that happens. But I did have another question though.
Okay.
That I remember that one. So let's say, what about how does so when you notes you can't pull up in a report. Right?
Notes, no. Notes and attachments you can't.
So let's say, but activities
you
can. Can you see what the note in activity? What can you?
So yes, we actually usually recommend to people if they need to report on any sort of notes people are taking, use the activities instead. Don't use the actual notes object. Have them log a call. Click log a call and just type your notes in the comments section.
And that will come up in the report. The comments.
The comments will come up in a report.
So if I want to know what Joy thyroid, who she's working with on thyroid,
yep,
and I want to see the activity attached to that.
Yep.
What's going on? That's great.
Exactly. So if I'm on a company here, instead of clicking new note, if I just click log a call, even though it's called log a call, I could choose from one of these things, and maybe we can even add one in here called note, that they can select this is a note, and then they just type their notes in. Notes here. Yes.
Show them this. This is what they're going to see now. Just a little background story. We had one of our users entering in their notes information. So I'm going to generalize their notes. They were entering it in the notes object. They were entering it in activity comment. They were entering it in a custom field we made for comments, and they were entering it in another custom field comments, but for the contact, not for the opportunity.
Okay.
So this one user has 4 locations in their notes.
Same info?
No, different info, different.
But they were just using it differently each time they were logging something. So it wasn't consistent.
They would know, oh, I put that note in this place, I put that note in this place. But, when I was building the Squid system, I had one user keep coming up to me, like, oh, my notes are gone. And I'm like, no, they're not gone, they're just not appearing. And then I figured out that she had 4 repositories for notes. I'm saying, okay,
gotta pick one.
Use this.
Yeah.
So for our activities, you said don't use notes.
Well, only if you want to report on it.
Yeah,
notes is okay if you don't need to report on it. That's totally fine. I use notes all the time. I like to use it as just little reminders to myself that I don't want other people to see because you can make them private. So it's if I log something, I can make it private and be like, okay, this is my note. But if somebody needs to report on it, you can't report on notes. So if somebody's like, oh, I want to see a report of all the notes I've created in the last month, you can't do that. Yeah, so that's why you would want to use tasks instead. And maybe down here, we'd want to add something in here that's completed an activity note, which is different than maybe we call this private notes or something like that.
Well, what I was going to say is for phone call, if they wanted to add a note, put that in description.
Exactly. So they could click phone call. It's just that then this will get logged. So if Marianne's running a report of show me all the activities this week, it's going to show up as a phone call. And maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just them reading through something and being oh, I want to remember this, and they wanted to type it in a note.
Yeah.
Then it's going to show up as a phone call. So maybe we need another selection for note. That way, when Marianne runs a report, she can say, oh, these are notes, I either could filter them out, say I don't want them in my report at all, or at least she can see there's this many notes being logged versus how many calls are being created.
And to include the activity and the activities on the report, that'll be on that left-hand field list, somewhere the pick list.
Right, this little pick list,
what is
we
it?
would want another one for note. This is like, do you want to log a phone call? Do you want to log a video chat? Do you want to log a voicemail? So this is a way,
Would
this
you
is,
drag in activity into the report, or no? What are you dragging in? You're dragging in phone. You're dragging in all
this
those
would be type.
options?
This is called type. So if we were
Okay.
creating an activity report, let's go ahead and create one. So we're going to click on the reports, we're going to click on activities. And this one can be confusing. Actually, it's probably a good thing we're going over this. Because activities is a generic term in Salesforce for more than one thing, which is kind of annoying. Because you're like, activities, it says activities here, but then it actually means like multiple things. So we're actually talking about two objects. One called tasks and one called events. So when you're creating a report, you want to actually type in task and create a tasks and events report, not an activities report, unless you wanted it on a specific object only. If you wanted to say, I want to see all my companies and their activities, then that's fine. Then you can type in activities. This is why it's annoying. Activities with companies, that will work. But if you want to see all the tasks in the entire system, you can't unless you type in tasks and not activities. So you got to kind of figure out, like, what report am I creating? Is it activities on a specific thing, or is it all?
I want to see Joy's activity on thyroid journal.
So that would be an opportunity. So we would type in activities, and we would choose with opportunities. And we'd create that. Now, I don't know if we're going to be able to filter down to the level you're expecting with thyroid journal. We'll have to see, because that's opportunity level data, and it may or may not be available in here. But let's go ahead and just start and see what we come up with. So
yeah, it should be the journal. It should be journal title.
This one does let it. Some reports don't let you use all the custom fields, so it's kind of trial and error.
Gotcha.
You kind of like create it, and you're like, is that available? Yeah, it is. So we can. So let's do that. Let's do field filter assigned to, and I'm just going to say contains Joy because I don't remember her last name. Contains Joy, open and completed activities, all time. So she doesn't even have any.
She used, okay. I didn't expect any. I just
She
just wanted
happened
to
to
see.
be the user
She's
who put
the
it in the
notes.
repository.
Yeah. Okay.
She's
Okay.
doing stuff.
So we'll just pull journal title on here so you can see it, but type is the field that would depict what kind of activity it is. So these ones are labeled call, this one's an email, this one's a meeting, this one's a to-do.
Right.
So you'd be able to categorize like that. Or you could filter and say only show me type equals, and then we should add one for note. And we'd have to add that to the squid pages as well, so they could select it.
Great.
Yeah, I don't think I had type note in there. The way we were pulling reporting was that little like phone call and the colon in front.
Yep.
You have a report in the back end. So anything with a phone call in front is phone call.
Right. I adjusted actually for subscribers. I did adjust your Squid JavaScript snippet so that it not only puts that in the subject, like the phone call colon, but it actually updates the type field. So you can filter off a type just in case somebody changes the subject. Because if somebody deletes phone call colon, now it's not included in your report. Yeah. So I did that on the subscriber ones, but I didn't do that on your other ones. But yeah, that's probably the best practice.
I actually didn't know how to put it in the JavaScript, so perfect.
Oh, that was my question from before. I'm noticing now with the new updates that Eric has created through Squid and everything, when I look up top when I'm in, new tabs are always opening. Is that normal? Is that the norm? Because it's the way you have it set up.
Yeah, it's the way the Squid tabs are set up.
It's like every time I go to a different page,
right.
It opens.
So like if I click on this one, well, actually I have it redirecting to the same page. I don't know if I have any examples in here. That one's gonna be a pop-up. This one doesn't. I don't have any examples right now. Let me log in as somebody else.
What are you talking about?
She's talking about. Let me see if I can log in as Matt Cook. So she's talking about like here, if you're on like a lead tab and you click create new lead, it opens a new tab with that new lead, but it doesn't, you still have your old tab open. It just like pops it open over here.
Yeah.
It's just a redirect. It's like how you have it set to
I
open
just
in a new
noticed that
page.
because the old time it never did that. It always just stayed on that one.
I
one
did that
tab.
because, first of all, like a lot of users were complaining about like having to
Yeah, having to go back. How do I get back to where I was? Yeah.
How do I go back to where I was? I was just like, okay, it's gonna open in a new page every time you click.
Yep.
And
then close that one when you're done, and then go back to your old tab. Yeah.
Sometimes I'll get like a message, like on the dialog box. Do you want to leave this page or stay on this
Yeah, it does
page?
that. Squid. It's a squid thing because
Okay.
it's like its way of being like, I think you might have made an update here.
Right.
If you're leaving, do you want to save it? Like before you leave, are you sure you want to leave this page? Like it thinks like sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't think that. Like if I just click cancel, it'll like go away because I didn't do anything. But if I start clicking around or like typing on something, then it thinks I'm in the middle of something, and it's like, are you sure you want to leave?
So if you type anything in right
Yeah.
now, delete it, and then click cancel.
And then I'm like, oh wait, I don't want that. Like usually that's when it starts. It might not, but sometimes it does. It's like very weird about it. It's like when it thinks you did something that you don't want to leave, not like when you think. So,
Another thing I wanted to get your input on. Did you notice anything peculiar about like the way that the top button search engine's been working lately after the last Salesforce update? Because we had an issue where one of our users couldn't find a company that they put in.
okay.
And I was like, the company exists. Let's see what you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
And I put in the company and it didn't work. And then I concatenated a little bit and it still didn't work. And then I kept going up until the first part of the company and it worked. And I clicked that and then opened up the company.
Yep.
Fine. So I was like, okay, that was weird because the spelling was the exact same. It was just one.
Do you use wildcards or are you like?
No, I didn't use the asterisk. I used just registers because most of our users don't know wildcards, so I wanted to see how they were doing it. But after I found that record type, the second time when I was going back and I searched what I first did, which first didn't return any results, I searched that exact string and it pulled up.
Found it again.
No problem. So
it does keep track of your recent items,
which is
something you've recently kicked on. So it must have done that the second time. Yeah. The first time, sometimes it is finicky and you do have to use a wildcard. Like sometimes I'm like, I know this exists and I'm typing it in and it like isn't finding it, and then I just add an asterisk at the end and it like finds it. And so it's like it's annoying sometimes.
Yeah, that's why I think I'm gonna have to instruct the users to do it from now on, because I've had a bunch of users say my company is deleted, it doesn't exist.
Let me see.
And I'm like, no, it exists.
I think this happened to me earlier. I was like looking for something. Oh, it showed up now though. It was like I was looking for test 1, but it wasn't coming up. Like, and it could even just be like a space or like. But like for some reason when I type in test space 1, I get test no space 1. But if I type in test with no space, I don't get the other way. So it's like very weird, like how sometimes, and so it's like, it's always like just better to just like type in what you know with an asterisk and it will give you everything.
So wait, the asterisk, you put an asterisk on the end and then
the end of it, and then
that means anything that has the first 4 characters here, TEST, anything after it, it'll return. But it would be starting with those. If you didn't know what it started with, then you'd put the asterisk first. And then it would return anything that like ends in that, or in this case it did return like things that are just that, but that would also like return this one because that one's at the end.
We'll make documentation for it because that's something.
Yeah. I think there's another wildcard too that's like, I forget why it's used. It's rarely used. I think it's a question mark. And it does something, but I can't remember off the top of my head. Nobody really uses it.
I remember from the old library systems, it used to be the hashtag.
Hashtag, yeah. I think Salesforce has a question mark. Typically, the asterisk is plenty, so you shouldn't need it. What else? I haven't looked at how the advertisers' profiles are set up, but do they have the ability to delete things?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So like, Do they ever have a problem where they like delete something they didn't mean to, or no? Okay. So I find that a lot. People are like, I deleted it and it's gone forever.
Well, you can
We
recover it.
usually, well, you can recover it from the recycle bin. But it only stays there for 15 days, and as long as like, if Eric for whatever reason did a major data job and like deleted a bunch of stuff, this can only hold so many records. So like, if I deleted it yesterday and it's still not like within the 15 days, if he like deleted a bunch of stuff, it would replace it, and that one would be pushed down because it was, it would be gone. So you can't unmerge, but it depends on what situation. Yeah, because if there's data on one record that you want to transfer to the other one, you kind of need to merge it. So they can undelete. We usually set it up in a way, we usually make delete on certain types of things admin only, like companies, because like you don't want them to delete a company that had historical opportunities on it. Maybe it's not their team, so they're like, oh, I don't need this company anymore, so they delete it. But it's like, oh, but the subscriber team still has opportunities in it. So we usually limit deletion of a lot of stuff to admin only, and if they need to delete something, usually what we do is usually put a status field on it, so they can mark it inactive. And then it's still in the system, but to them, they're like, oh, I inactivated it. So they're happy with themselves. But then if they really have a problem, they can come to you, or you can run reports to say, show me all the inactive ones, and then you can decide as an admin, should we delete this or not?
Yeah, I don't think any users have ever deleted anything.
Okay.
Ever.
That's good.
That was fun.
Yeah.
We really needed.
Yeah, because like on the squid pages, I removed the delete buttons. They just don't even have it. Like I took it off their profile, but I also just took it off the page so they can't even see it, so they're not gonna like question like, oh, why can't I delete this? It's like, it's just no delete button.
Yeah, you can't delete.
Let's see, what else comes up typically? I can't remember. In the squid pages, did you keep the sidebar on the pages so they can access this or not?
I intended to remove all of them. I think there are a couple lingering.
Okay.
The only reason I didn't do those is because they create new buttons. I think they require new overrides.
Yep.
And here's the thing, if you
Yep.
create new, users are already seeing too much.
Yep.
I'm trying to. We're getting this off the ground, so I want everyone to be comfortable with the fundamentals, and then we'll go into intricacies. We'll go into merging,
Gotcha.
combining, and sharing, and all that stuff. But right now, users are having trouble with like basics.
The
We
basic
want them
stuff.
to be fully comfortable with that, and then
Yep.
they can see all
That makes sense. Because the only thing that I noticed when I was navigating, I was like, oh, I wish I had my sidebar. Like there were certain squid pages where I had it, and then there's certain ones I didn't. And I was like, oh, I wish I had my sidebar back. And the reason is because of the recent items. We can get rid of the create new usually on a sidebar. I think we can hide it completely. But the recent items are so helpful because otherwise you're like, I was just on that, I closed it, then I go back to my leads tab, but it's not recent leads anymore. Now it's like all leads. So then it's like now I have to go and search for that thing again. So the recent items is helpful if people are confused about that.
Yeah, I'm gonna put the sidebar back with recent items. I bet it's right.
I just noticed like small little things as like navigational things that could be helpful. What else? They create their own leads, their own companies, contacts, ops, and then you guys just check them. Yeah.
Now, for your input on the leads, everyone's been using leads differently, and I wanted to put full stop to being using leads until everyone understands how we use leads. My understanding from leads is it can serve a bunch of different purposes, but I think for our purpose, we're going to have it be our firewall between likely opportunities that are going to generate revenue and unlikely. So if you go to a conference and you get 500 contacts, you put all of them in leads. Not all 500 of those people you're going to do business with, so you only convert the ones that are good, and then the other ones you don't convert.
Agreed.
In the past, what people have been doing is they put in all 500 contacts into leads, and then convert all 500 of those leads into
accounts contacts.
accounts and contacts and stuff. And I'm saying that, like, please don't do that, because we have one user that accounts for 40. She's getting close to 50. 50% of our duplicates is one user because of the whole leads thing.
And she's not converting and attaching to an existing one. She's converting and creating new.
Creating new, because she's not doing the drag bar to the, there are options. You can, okay, you're creating another Roche. A Roche exists. You want to merge it? No. She's just creating new.
Create new every time.
Now for like importing, when you came back, would she put it into leads?
That's a good. It's kind of. I almost would say yeah. That's why originally I asked. I was like, "Are you creating them as companies and contacts, or are these leads?" So, if they're completely brand new people, I would import them as leads always. If they're existing people you're trying to update information, then companies and contacts. But if you're going to do that search and try to find the Salesforce IDs, that would tell you. And you just break your list up into two. You'd say everybody with a Salesforce ID I'm going to put in one list, and everybody that's not I'm going to put in another list. Import all the ones that are not in leads, because that will keep the database cleaner. Because otherwise you'll have all these people in there that you never even have an opportunity with. They're just floating around, cluttering up your contact list.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about yesterday, like not using leads. Take back what I said.
Okay,
Use leads.
because I just put 4 leads in, and I was like,
well,
leads are fine. It was just more of the fact that people were thinking leads is a prerequisite to stuff. So like,
that person's already in there, you're saying, and then they're adding leads.
I have a question about that. So let's say, we got an email, let's say, from McKellar. McKellar wanted, now we didn't contact him, he just randomly emailed us requesting a media kit for cyber and asking about rates. So I entered him as a lead, but then I converted him to a contact because I clicked media kit sent. So did I have to enter him as a lead at all? Can I just go in and enter him as a contact and skip the lead?
Good question. So there's a couple things. A lead is not a prerequisite to a company and a contact. You don't have to create a lead. But if this is a brand new company that you don't have in your system at all, it's faster to create it as a lead than it is to go and create the company. Right. And then go and create the contact and relate it to the company, and then go and create the opportunity and relate it to the company.
Right.
So it's actually faster if this is completely brand new after you do a search and you're like, this is a completely brand new company.
Okay.
It's not just a company that exists with a new contact. It's a brand new company. Create it as a lead, add in your contact, convert it, and now you got 3 things done in one click.
That makes sense.
So it is, you can do it that way. Makes your life easier.
Totally.
But you also could just go and create a company and then a contact and an opportunity.
Then,
so,
yes, then we have to create the company.
Yeah. Unless it was an existing company. Then you would click on the company and just add a contact to it. You would not create them as a lead.
No, it wasn't. I had to create the company.
Yeah. So that's why you always search first. Like, that's like the key. Before you're going to create something, search first. And search a few different ways, because like you said, sometimes you don't get the results right away. So search a few different ways and be like, okay, no, I really think it's not in here. I'm going to create it.
Yeah, that's what I did.
So, yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the advertising side. I don't think any other issues you guys have run into that. I'm going to create a video on how to actually make the reports from reports. So like when you export the data tables, what to do with the data tables and the pivot tables and the charts. So you guys will have that. I'm just going to make a video. I'll make a YouTube account for Marianne or something. Post it there. I can't think of anything else. If you guys have any questions.
Okay. Great. So I'm going to pause this.